And ba-da-ba-da-ba-ba, just like that, we are streaming worldwide, everybody. Welcome to episode 63 of Everything Teams Phone Live. Brandon, how's it going, buddy?
Oh man, it's a warm one today here in Denver, and it's maybe a sad week for Momentum proper. If people haven't already seen the news, England faced Amsterdam, the Netherlands, in the semifinals of the UEFA Euro 2024. And last week, Rick, we had our Horizon counterpart, Barry and Euron, on our show. They're probably never going to talk to us again after that because unfortunately England squeaked through a victory. And now I'm sitting here, we were in the green room while we were waiting for everyone to join. I was talking to Ali, who we'll introduce here in a second. And I was just saying, I'm sitting on a potential plane ticket to England because the finals, it's England and Spain on Sunday. So I'm like, maybe I should hop over to London, join some of our partners over in London and have a fantastic weekend. But we'll see. Outside of that, it is a great day here in Denver.
It's I know Ali is in, we're going to introduce him in a minute, but I know Ali is sitting in the area I'm at in Seattle. And I know the rest of the country probably doesn't have a bit of sorrow for us at all or feel bad for us in any way, shape, or form. But it's about 90 something odd. The last few days have been like 95 degrees here in the Seattle area. And this is not an area that is, known to have air conditioning and all that good stuff. I do, so good. So I'm not sweating, but it's warm outside. Like it's really warm outside. When 95 blows through the northwest, it's like a beating down sort of it. It gets pretty darn warm out there. So it's 90 something out, and it's nice.
What no one can see, and I'm now it's TMI for the whole world to listen to. But I'm sitting at a desk. No. And I've purposely put my desk over an AC vent because I sit up in a loft west facing. So it's like 100 degrees outside. So my loft is baking hot. My AC is cranked and I got my feet over the vent. I'm like, oh, that's the only way I'm going to stay cool.
That is definitely
TMI.
That's definitely TMI. All right. Bailey, thank you. Bailey, you're back.
I'm back.
I was just going to say, maybe my internet's messing. I was just going to say this. I was on a call earlier and I watched someone putting socks on a meeting with a customer. I thought that was kind of funny. Sorry, Bailey, over to you.
Oh, yeah, that's no good.
Too much TMI.
There you go. Bailey's back with us. And Bailey, it's crazy. Okay. Brandon, why don't you do an introduction and tell us who we have as guest today? I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'm actually very excited to welcome Ali from DOWL LLC. Ali, I will let you, talk about who DOWL is here in a second, but I just want to set the stage. Ali and Rick and I have known each other for, I don't know, 2-3 years maybe.
So it's been about that.
We're gonna get into the history with Ali here in a little bit. So Ali, welcome to the show. Go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll kind of dive in.
Absolutely. Well, good to be here with you guys. So my name's Ali. I'm based out of the Seattle area, as Rick mentioned. And yeah, I've been with DOWL about 4 years now, started just as the pandemic started, switching companies and new role. And that's always fun. Here, welcome to a new org. Now go home and work and don't meet any of the people you work with. So yeah, based out of the Seattle area. And we've known each other now, I guess it's been about since 21. We started talking and the evolution of what phones are and how we get to a modern day. So yeah, that's me and that's who I am.
So and before we get into anything, your role at DOWL is CIO, is that correct? And
Chief
I think
Officer.
Yeah, Rick and I were, we were socializing. You're, I think, probably our first CIO to join, and we kind of did that. Yeah. We picked you selfishly, but I think we're starting to find the importance of taking your story and people like you, the C-level stories out as a podcast to talk about, what were your challenges? Where were you, especially through that pandemic era, and then as you transition into that, what we're now affectionately calling the modern work era, and what's that vision for your company, and how are you going to progress? So, Rick, thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Oh, I think we're struggling with Rick's internet.
I'd love to hear a bit about DOWL. Like I think
Yeah,
understanding a little bit about what DOWL does
absolutely. Well, I think I know where Rick's
might have
going with
cut
this.
out
So
there.
we are a civil engineering firm. We've got offices from Greater Alaska all the way down to Arizona, from the West Coast out to Wyoming. Our folks are out in the field. They're in the offices. We're designing bridges, airports, dams, waterways. We touch anything transportation related. So we've got, while we're a civil engineering firm, we've got a wide variety of everything we do. So our folks need to be out and about. They need to be able to connect with our office, with our folks, with clients while they're anywhere. And that's really one of the biggest drivers for us trying to find that next evolution. And it's really what led us to you guys.
Yeah, and for me, having worked primarily in what I'll call kind of the SaaS world for most of my career, I've been, neck deep in communication technology, and as I'm talking to you, it's always interesting. You're coming from a company that's a civil engineering company, and on the surface, people don't necessarily view, like, if I'm looking at DOWL, I'm not viewing DOWL as a technology company necessarily, meaning like us, it's they're off digging holes and building bridges, and I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but there's actually probably a massive amount of technology requirements in a civil
Yeah.
engineering firm, anything from GIS systems to surveying to, and then obviously communications, right? So
Yeah,
let's
absolutely.
let's maybe talk about you when you joined DOWL. Where were you at from a company, from a communications perspective? What kind of solution was in place, and then what were you up against from a business perspective? What were your challenges? Where did you want to take the business? What
Yeah.
was that evolution goal for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to make the hairs on everybody's neck rise real quick, but we were on-premise PBX, Mitel, physical phones with on-computer clients, but nothing could be accessed off our LAN. And it was the old school PBX that could never move anywhere else. And we had to figure out how to take it that next step. So when people worked, they had to, every day they left, they forwarded their phones to their cell phone. And if they came back in the office and forgot to turn off that forward, it kept ringing to their cell phone every day. If somebody sat down at their desk and picked up their phone, it would ruin their forward while they were gone on vacation. And it became really challenging to not allow people to work as flexibly as they wanted to. And when we sat back and looked at, great, now the pandemic is sending people home, they're able to remote into their computer and open up their Mitel client and change their forward if they wanted to, but it still became this antiquated technology we had to deal with every day. The amount of tickets we got into the help desk of, I need my phone forward. I forgot to do it while I left. I'm on vacation now. Or can somebody turn off my forward? I keep getting sales calls and I'm out of the office. It became unmanageable. And it wasn't fair to our end users that they couldn't manage the technology that they had at their fingertips themselves. So when we sat back and kind of looked at it, I had called our Mitel provider at the time and said, guys, we love you. This isn't working. I need to know the next step. And we sat on probably a couple-hour phone call and talked about every option of where we are now and how we become modern. And really, one of the things that we looked at was, we've got Microsoft. We, at the time that we started these discussions, were an E3 shop, which did not give us Microsoft Teams phone system at the time. But we had planned at the end of the year to go E5, or sorry, mid-year, go E5. And that was for all the security products we needed to put in place. Just with all the events happening these days, we needed to up our game on the security side. And with that gave us Microsoft E5. And it opened up the world for us on that. Now, our biggest challenge was, how do we pump in all of our almost 1,000 phone numbers into Microsoft Teams? And when we started to look at that, I might be jumping ahead of you guys, but our biggest challenge was the phone numbers that we had at play. All the lower 48 phone numbers were with 2 lower 48 providers. No big deal. They're the run-of-the-mill lower 48 providers. We were able to do whatever we wanted with. Our challenge was Alaska. We had a provider up in Alaska. They couldn't deliver to Microsoft. They couldn't deliver electronically to the lower 48. We ended up in a 6-month battle until we finally, and Brandon, you were in this deep with us. We ended up in this battle where the only thing they would do is deliver SIP channels to a physical device in an Alaska office, and then told us, do whatever you want with it from here. And we spent months coming up with a solution. And essentially, and I know this is going to go crazy, but it went from our provider to a physical office, over our SD-WAN to Seattle, out of our data center and firewall over the SD-WAN to G12. G12 pumped it in over direct routing to Microsoft. If any one of those things went wrong, and we had it happen a couple times, all phone numbers stopped working. And it's not a viable solution. And it's an Alaska problem. And, I'm glad to hear that you guys are growing your business and you're talking to more people up in Alaska and working with more businesses, because I feel that the technology is finally starting to catch up to where you guys as Momentum can now really start helping those clients of yours. So that's where we were, and that's kind of the middle point. How much further do you want me to go? Do you want me to keep telling the story?
I've got to hold on. Before we get into your story about that, I want to tell a quick little story about Alaska just for a second, because I was invited to the Alaska Communications some sort of a thing in Hawaii they have every year. So they have this kind of get together of the telecom companies every year.
BBC, maybe.
What's that? I forget what it was called. Anyway, so I met Senator Ted Stevens. Now, he's a late Senator Ted Stevens because he was on a telecom company's airplane on the way to a fishing lodge and crashed and passed away. Yeah. But I met Senator Ted Stevens there, and I'm sitting there talking to him. And I said, I'm about to do this speech. And he says, well, what's your speech about? It's about how you should pump telecommunication services into the lower 48. I'm like, if you want to drive Alaska revenue, like you should pull some of that revenue up or push some of your business down, so that you can start to engage in the lower 48 from a telecommunications perspective. Don't look at it as, let me just charge a whole bunch of money and keep everyone hostage. You know what I mean? As a service provider there. And so that was the speech that I gave to a room full of Alaska telecom executives. And you could imagine the look on everyone's face. And I recall that's probably the only, and I've given, I don't know, hundreds of speeches. That's probably one of the only speeches where I gave a presentation and a speech where there wasn't any noise at the end of it. It was dead silent. Like they're like, what are you talking about? You young whippersnapper, talking about pumping traffic up or down. And anyway, but that was my Alaska. So when you talk about, having to figure out how you drive numbers out of Alaska into a modern sort of environment, but you're not getting it. You're getting, here's the stop at the physical location. Let me pipe it over my network and then pop it down to Seattle. You lost me again?
Yeah.
We got you.
Oh man,
we got you back.
Sorry, everyone. My internet is bouncing. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's okay.
You know what it is, Brandon? He's got his AC set so low because of the heat outside. It's freezing his internet.
His internet, his fiber is starting to frost up. The glass is starting to frost. The lasers can't move. No, I think there's a lot to unpack, Ali.
That's exactly what it is. You guys are hilarious. That's awesome.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack with your story, and I'm going to step back because I think the Alaska piece is going to be a really important topic a little later here.
Absolutely.
In fact, an hour probably isn't even enough time to cover your story, and I think your story is super relevant to the other enterprises we talk to, because we often hear, we know we want to go to Teams, but we doubt that Teams can solve this problem, this problem, this problem. And I've had the pleasure of working with you. Fantastic. I would recommend you to anyone from just a partnership perspective. Super intelligent, easy to work with. It's been a joy. A little tidbit for you. I think you already know this, but Rick had been bugging me for years to join G12 Communications, and I had always been turning them down. And I came on board G12 in late 2021, and I think you were one of the first potential customers I was introduced to. It was essentially Rick said, "Hey, Ali, meet Brandon. Brandon, meet Ali. And by the way, Ali has a big problem. You need to solve it for him." And I'm like, I don't even wait. What?
Oh yeah, we remember your first week. We know your first week. It was with us.
It was like
it actually was.
It was like this deer in the headlights look. Like, I'm still learning how to spell G12. But you know, the thing about it is, there was a lot going on in that, because it was middle of pandemic. As you know, you're trying to pivot away from Mitel to get remote workforce going. We were just sitting down. Operator Connect was just launching with Microsoft. We were like carrier number 6 or 7 to join that program. So we were neck deep working on that, trying to get certified. So you and we sit down, and I think at the time, the proposal, because we weren't in Operator Connect from a production GA perspective yet. So
correct.
Our proposal to you, and I'll let you expand on this, was, hey, we've got a cloud communication, a UCaaS platform that we can move your service to, that gets you into we've got a mobile app, we've got this, we've got that. And then I think you must have explained, I didn't hear the whole story, obviously, because I joined for the Alaska fire hydrant drill, right? The drink from the fire hose. But it was, I think that's when you started telling the story of, guys, I've got this E5 and we want to somehow make Teams work. And so, we had this pandemic era solution where we had Teams integrated into our UCaaS platform. And so let's spend some time talking about how we took you from, your challenge with Mitel to solving your remote work challenge, getting you into Teams. Maybe what did that adoption look like? Because obviously it probably was a little more challenging for you, because not only did you have to learn a new phone system, but you also had to figure out how to get people to adopt the new phone system with Teams. So maybe unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, well, let me ask a specific question about that. You, at the time, and I, at the time, you could have gone Microsoft all the way, and straight away, and then but you chose a different path, right? You chose a different path, and I'm curious, what was the driver behind that decision? Because believe it or not, we still see some organizations making that decision, and with a different purview today, we look at that decision and go, boom. Right. So just because we know better now. So take us through that.
Yeah, that one was actually we whiteboarded that one for a little bit. And it was the decision of porting every phone number to Microsoft and saying, we are going 100% Microsoft right now, or we're going to go with this cloud PBX product and have G12 be our vendor. And we're going to port every number we can so they can be our provider. And it's a one-stop shop. And we get that transition help that we need. And ultimately what we landed on, one, was value. Moving to G12 was it costs us more than what we were paying with Mitel, 100%, but you guys were the provider that we could pick up the phone, fire off an email and say help, and it was solved. If we moved to Microsoft, it was going to cost us exponentially more, because Microsoft charges a different cost for porting every number into their system. And it would have been, I think, 3 to 4 times what we were initially paying with Mitel alone. And then we weren't going to have the support that we wanted or needed. So plus the other big thing, and Brandon hit on this, the product was still in its infancy. It wasn't quite there yet. And you guys were not Operator Connect at the time. And we really wanted to wait for that Operator Connect, not direct routing for everything. So really, that, to answer your question, Rick, those were the things that we ran through. And ultimately it came down to the support and the company behind it to help us make that transition. And we're a company of 550 people. I'm spread across 8 states. I've got an office in Alaska of 109, but most of my other offices are anywhere from 10 to 50, 60 people. And I've got a team of 9, 10 people, and we're spread out. We're not all in the same office. So having somebody like G12 be a support for us was the more important part to help us make that transition. And I hope that answers your question.
That's perfect, because what I'm thinking here is that the organizations today that are thinking about that don't have the timing that you were dealing with, right? That the timing that you were, that was exactly, I think that was a perfect answer, to be honest, because I look at that and I go, oh, I forgot about, we weren't in Operator Connect as an example, and it wasn't a fully sort of, baked solution just yet, because, it just wasn't there just yet. And it's interesting. I completely, like, the timing just just totally forgot about it. So at the time, that was the right decision at the time. That was absolutely the right decision. And I think about, this is where I go back and I think about organizations today. And I'm like, that's not the right decision anymore. And Brandon said it earlier in his comments. He's like, it was a pandemic era solution, right? Having the cloud PBX tied to your Microsoft Teams environment. What do you think about that now, Ali? I'm curious. What do you think about that sort of, that connectivity now, as opposed to where you sit today, all sort of Operator Connect, if you will, and all that? What do you think about that solution today?
Yeah. So,
and don't be afraid to say whatever you want to say about it,
Yeah. So I guess that kind of hits back at the story of where we were and how we've gotten to where we are today. Just a high level, we made that first transition, cloud PBX. You guys managed it, direct routing for everything. Really cleaned up our environment, really put us in a position where we can be agile and nimble, and everybody can run around and work as they want with a phone in their pocket. And the next step, which, Rick, I don't know if you know this, but we just finished our next migration about 3 weeks ago, where we moved the entire lower 48 to Operator Connect, and we are natively now in Teams, and we've gone away from the virtual PBX. So we are, other than our Alaska phone numbers, 100% Operator Connect and Microsoft phone system now. And it is a night and day difference from what we used to be, and the way we even manage our phone system in the interim. Our operators absolutely love the product that we're on now. It's simplified everything. They use one client. They can have all the information they want at their fingertips within the Teams client. And I'll give you a really good funny story. So when we talk about our transition, I had flown up to Alaska at one point when we said, okay, we're pulling the trigger. This is the route we're going off of Mitel, right? And we brought G12 in. We started the workbooks. We started everything else. We started to pull all the CSRs from all the providers. And I had flown up to Alaska, and we were swapping out some of our network switches. And my guys look at me and they say, Ollie, we're out of network ports in the main building. So what do you mean we're out of network ports? How are we out? They said, well, we have all these old Mitel phones, and they've got dual Ethernet. But the problem is if we plug in a computer into it, it's only 100 meg. It's not gig. So we're going to kill everybody that's running all these CAD files, and we can't reclaim our ports. And we sat there, and in about 5 minutes flat, I said, grab a cart, pull every phone off of every desk. Because weeks before, we had sent out this all staff memo that said, start using your Mitel virtual client on your computers, use your headsets, force yourself to stop using the desk phones. This is the first step to us going 100% soft phone. And we noticed that people were starting to do that. So I pulled all the phones. The next day, the one and only complaint that I got was from one person. And it wasn't just the Alaska office we did this. We did this to, I think it was like 16 offices. And it was over the course of a couple of days, we pulled every desk phone out and threw them in a box. And so you're talking about 500 plus desk phones, Mitel phones. But the only complaint that I got was, now I can see the dust spot where my phone used to be. That was it. It was a non-event for folks, which was beautiful, because it tells me that they were ready for technology, right? Even some of the people that I expected were going to have a tough time with it, they're already on Teams meetings all day. They've already got headsets on. Now they don't have to take their headset off and pull a handset up to their head. They're using the same tool. And, I'll give you that one more step. One of the things that was beautiful about our transition was that was our first step to starting getting everybody on the employee level ready for this transformation, right? The second step, which G12 was, I can't even thank you guys enough for this, but what you guys did was gave every employee a temporary number in Teams in Operator Connect. So we had 600 temporary numbers. We went into Mitel. We forwarded all the Mitel numbers to the temporary Teams number, and you ghosted their outbound temporary number to be their Mitel number. And for a month, people ran that way using Teams and using the Mitel soft phone client simultaneously. Nobody could see a difference. It was a non-event. And
win for creativity, right? Man,
it was absolutely utter. It was beautiful. And you know, I hear you say this a lot, Rick, but there's a word that starts with S. It was that.
shit.
What it? No.
Censor that.
Beep, beep.
I think he was talking
Dang
about
it,
the one
Rick.
that ends in XY.
That's right.
Ollie, we had a question come in, and I know that you were talking about the transition.
Yeah.
Basically, how would you describe the difference in, you know, the administration when it comes to Operator Connect versus, you know, Cloud PBX with Teams?
Yeah, I mean, because we had a complex environment that was split between lower 48 and Alaska, we had a lot of challenges on how our numbers were managed. And it did make things a little difficult. But when we were on the first iteration, you guys took care of everything. It was a managed service for us at that point. So every few months, we would do a quick audit, make sure everything was good. All the support tickets were taken care of as we needed them. And we just kept moving forward. Now that we've moved over to Teams administration, my team manages it. Said and done. It's create an AD account, assign a number, and everybody keeps moving. It takes us
amazing.
less time than it did to write an email to Momentum at G12 to say, make this change. So that administration was absolutely simple. And we're at a point now where we manage it ourselves. And if we need anything, we just call you guys, put a bucket of hours and say, help, we're done. And we move forward.
Yeah, I think Ollie, you
awesome.
touched on a lot there.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
I can hear my internet for just a second. He did. I want to go back to the whole ripping the Band-Aid right off and dropping the hardware like instantly.
Yeah.
That's crazy. How, and you didn't lose any popularity. Like one person called you. Is that all?
It was one person called, and it was a funny call. I think they submitted a help desk ticket that said something along the lines of, you know, I'm really mad that you guys took away my phone. Now I can see the dust spot of where it used to be. And that was it. And you know what's funny is I hit on this a couple times, the telling people to use the soft phone and then finally pulling away the desk phone was a non-event. Ghosting phone numbers in Teams with a temporary number and allowing people to use Teams as a phone, that was a non-event for us. But what was a more beautiful non-event, and I'll tell you guys this, and you know, you guys probably hear this more often, IT professionals go through phone system changes less than a handful of times in their careers. You don't make them very often because of how complex they can get. But I went on vacation when we moved from Mitel to our Cloud PBX. I took a 1-week vacation because our workbooks were in place. G12 said they got it. And the week before we had a go no go meeting, and you guys said, we're done. We're just waiting for the time to run out for the numbers to port to us from your lower 48 providers, and we're go. Anything that happens, we can remedy. And we did it one evening at like 8:00 at night, I think it was, or it was like the next morning at some early hour. And I heard nothing. But I'll tell you what was the funniest part is my team loves to mess with me when I go on vacation. And the next day, I'm seeing these Teams messages go by, and I'm sitting on a beach in Florida at a beach house with like 20 family members, and we're hanging out. And all of a sudden, they're sending these Teams messages on the team chat. the entire IT team chat saying, yeah, we should probably buy these, the hardware it's going to solve this problem. It's probably going to be about a $30,000 hit per office, but we can get it tomorrow. And I just pick up my phone and I join the call and I say, hi guys, what are you buying? And they're like, nothing, everything's working fine. We have no complaints, no problems, nothing. We just wanted to see if you were paying attention to your phone.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh,
I cannot
terrible.
go on vacation around here. They mess with me, man. It's
No.
brutal.
That's a good
That's just
point.
not even nice. That's just not even nice,
Right?
man. God.
You know, and now that we've, like I said, taken that next step of going full Teams phone system, same thing, non-event. We put a 2-hour time block on the calendar for folks to know that there was some type of service outage, and nothing changed.
And how did that? Yeah, let's talk about that transition, and then I'm gonna want to pivot to something else that's somewhat related. But how did that transition go? Obviously, you know, G12 now Momentum. We were your service provider. We had the numbers. There was no porting involved. You already had that Teams integration, so that a lot of those configs were already in the Teams phone system. So like you said, maybe it was a non-event, but you know, I think it's important for our listeners to hear your story about, you know, again, Rick and I sit on calls all the time where we might be listening to people going, man, you have no idea how hard this is going to be, or, you know, we just don't think we can give up these phones, or you've got to make these phones work. And so I just want to make sure that as you're telling your story, I'm going to nudge you to emphasize how easy that transition was. And then I'm going to pivot back to something else that I think is very important to talk about related to that.
Yeah. I mean, literally, it was a non-event. I went on vacation. I was that comforted by how the technology was going to work for us. Now, getting rid of the physical phones, we anticipated maybe a couple of the folks that were just, you know, they don't sit on Teams calls all day. They don't wear a headset all day. They just didn't want it. We had already bought headsets for everybody. They were at their desks. All they had to do was plug them in and put them on their head. We did at one point we went through the exercise of what if we needed to buy a physical phone. And Rick, I think you and I had some conversations around what are our options there, right? We can get LAN PoE connected devices, or the other ones we looked into, which actually looked better, but we never had to go there. And we don't want to spend the thousands of dollars on it, is a USB connected device to your computer. And when you log into Teams, it mimics your Teams client as a physical desk phone. Mm-hmm. But once again, when we looked at everything, we looked at what was going to be the ROI of hardware we put on a desk. How long was it going to last? What was its lifespan? Is it really going to get used? And ultimately, what it came down to was we needed to thin out our technology. Our people are on the move. Our people want to be nimble and flexible. They don't want to be tied to a physical device. They would rather have bigger monitors on their desk than the company pay for physical desk phones. They would rather have newer laptops, which we do. We have 3-year life cycles on our hardware. And that was what was going to make this more expensive, is if we apply our standard 3 to 5 year life cycle on our phones, we were going to be paying how many hundreds of thousands of dollars every 3 to 5 years for new hardware? Why?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's not worth it. It's an industry that's continually changing. And I know this might be a stab for some people, but phone numbers are also dying, right? We FaceTime. We use VoIP for everything. We're on Teams calls. I mean, my 9-year-old kid made fun of me the other day because I was listening to you guys in the car when I was driving him to summer camp. And it was last week's call. And, you know, I had it on the audio, and he's like, Dad, why is everybody talking about phones? We don't even have a house phone anymore. And all you do is FaceTime and Teams on yours. And I'm like, you know, that's
good
dang,
question.
These kids are
good. They're smart, man. Good call out.
These kids,
interesting,
man.
Interesting, Brandon. I know you want to go somewhere, but I want to pick up on that in a minute. I'll let you do your topic first. You want to chat about Brandon, but I want to come back to that.
I think it's going to be good to come back to that, because even, you know, obviously Momentum, a lot of our business is based on the telephone number, but even we recognize that the PSTN minutes going down, and even we're making some visionary pivots, which I'll let Rick come back to. But before we do that, I want to kind of bring it back to kind of the CIO level perspective for a minute. And obviously you weren't in London for this Teams conference that I was telling you about in the green room, but I'm going to make a shout out to Adam Ball. You don't maybe know him, Ollie, but he's a Microsoft MVP. He did a session on the 5 things, or I say 5 things, these 5 topics that when you're looking to move from one phone system to another, kind of the 5 things you probably shouldn't do unless you want to generate your resume for a new job. And kind of his whole, the whole basis of his session was, it's really, really important to do 2 things. And Adam, I'm summarizing poorly probably, so you can lecture me later. But one is, make sure you understand your business requirements.
Yeah.
And then 2, make sure you've got a partner who you can lean on that's going to help you be successful. Those are kind of the 2 critical things. And I think, as we're talking and you're telling your story and I'm reminiscing, the one thing I can appreciate about working with you, even from the very beginning, is you came to the table with, this is where I want to go. This is the plan.
Yeah.
These are the challenges we have to overcome. One being the Alaska, that spoke hanging off in Alaska with no real solution. So we had to sit down, and we spent a lot of time making the plan. And then you brought up, and I totally forgot about this, the way that we set up temporary numbers to kind of bring the calls into the new phone system from your Mitel and allow you kind of to do that ease of transition. And so from your perspective, as we're talking and we've got our listeners, what would you say to the importance of planning and partnership, and what that takes, and then maybe any ancillary thoughts you have around that?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It was the planning, the workbooks, the number of phone calls that we had in meetings to go over all the details, the call queues, the phone handling. I would say one of the best things, and shout out to Brett Rogers on your guys' team, because he is absolutely phenomenal. Him, and then you guys have a gal in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, thank you. Andy is absolutely amazing. If it wasn't for the 2 of them at the very beginning of this, we kind of sat back in our first meeting and we said, okay, what's the best way to do this? Do you guys really want, if we're dumping the old, do we even want to think about the old anymore? And we made the conscious decision in our first planning meeting to say no. And I picked up the phone, called a couple of our other chiefs and said, here's the deal. We're going to start this thing from the ground up. I want to know how the business wants to operate. Ignore what we are doing now. How do we want phones to operate as we go forward? How do we move to that next step? I mean, we did things before where we didn't even expose the IDs of our employees when they made an outbound call. It exposed the main number of the office, which if it rang back, went to operators.
Mm-hmm.
And our operators, we have 4 of them for the entire organization. So it never even came back to the office that the employee called out of. We don't have operators at every physical location. So it got to the point where we said, you know what, we're starting all over. We're starting from scratch. DIDs get exposed. We're recreating all the call routes. We've got all new call queues that are modern and make more sense to us. And, coming from a planning perspective, that was the best thing that we did. We simplified and gutted everything out and started over. And as far as knowing what the business needs, that was the business telling me what they needed. I didn't make decisions for the business. I had our chief admin officer with several other people that were all involved in it. And they came back and said, this is how we want it to work. And then we talked to our operators. This is how our operators want it to work. And then we came back to you guys and said, this is what DOWL needs. Let's build it. And between Brett and Andy, they built it.
And I think it's like a good approach too. It's solving the business problem instead of an IT problem.
Well, and you guys all know GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Don't always just take what you've been doing and move it forward. Take a step back and think about, that 30,000 foot level. Sorry, Rick, I think you only fly at 5,000 feet, right?
Roasted.
up to 12,500, up to
Okay,
12 and a half
12.5.
thousand
So
before I need oxygen.
okay, so the 12,500 foot view, you got to look at it from that perspective and say, what do we really need, and how do we uncomplicate everything? And is it better to just start over? And we chose start over.
Man,
Clean.
I think
Yeah.
what you just said is such a powerful message. And I know not every business necessarily could maybe start completely over, but I think the important takeaway I'm hearing you say, and this is a message we hear in the space within, as we're talking to other industry experts around, you know, people want their phone system the way it was. And I'm going to throw a date, doesn't mean it's the
Yeah.
actual date, but like 1999, right? Like, I had this extension, I want to be able to dial this extension. And to what Bailey just came in and said, you're solving a business challenge, not necessarily a, hey, this is my IT problem to solve. This is a bigger conversation that needs to be had. And for the listeners, straight from Ali's mouth, don't be afraid to, I'm summarizing for you, Ali.
Yeah.
Or
No, go for it.
paraphrasing. Don't be afraid to start over if you have to.
See, this is where we need a big banner across the screen right now that says phone extensions are dead.
Yeah,
Because
this is
they don't exist anymore. It's not a thing. You dial by name, or somebody's direct number. The extensions are dead.
yeah. This is great, because this is we preach so much in the when we're talking about Teams, right? The Teams ecosystem. We talk about Power BI, and we talk about
Yep.
Copilot Studios, and we talk about all these different components, because we're trying to help organizations understand how to solve business problems, right? So, instead of this line item replacement of IT, let's talk about what are you actually trying to solve with that solution? Because guarantee you 100,000% we can solve it more efficiently and better in the Microsoft ecosystem, solve the business problem, than just an exact replacement of what you've been doing for the last 20 years, right? And so that was a observant comment on Bailey's part. It's just like, you're solving a business problem, not solving IT. And by the way, not to mention that most phone systems have been in for 20 years or 25 or 30 years, right? They've been in a long time. So how much garbage is stuck in your phone system that you've had for the last 20 years? And the bigger that gets, the more important you think it is. And when you kind of clear the slate and go, how do you want this to work? How do you want this to work? And it's like, it's just clean.
Correct.
It's a flat sort of network, if you will, and operates the way you want it to operate. So now you know exactly what to change. We need to change it.
And you brought something up really cool, which we now, being on the iteration that we are now, direct Microsoft Teams phone system, having BI access, it is the coolest thing. I mean, it is utterly amazing to be able to dive into the data of call health, how many calls are actually coming in, where are they going, what is their length of time. Most of our phone calls, I'm going to be honest with you, are all sales calls. There are people trying to pitch us on some software or some other company. They're not client phone calls. And it's back to that, phones are dead, because if you're conversing with somebody that you're setting up a meeting. You're not picking up a random phone and calling somebody anymore. That doesn't happen. People are busy.
All right,
We're gonna
take you somewhere else. We're gonna take
All
you.
Right,
we're gonna delete that last section. No. This is back to what your son said in the car, right? Why are you even talking about phones? Because does anybody make phone calls anymore? You're WhatsApping, you're FaceTiming, whatever it may be. This is like Brandon said, we see this, right? And so long term, we look at this and we go, how do we start an engagement? Okay, how do we start with? And you're gonna, if you're a business, you're gonna have inbound sort of engagement from your customers, right? Whether it's prospective customers, existing customers, you're gonna have inbound. That's going to be your kind of a lifeblood, if you will, if you're selling something on a website, let's just say. So I'd love your opinion on this, because it's my contention, and Brandon, I think we both think along the same lines here, where a lot of people start their engagement right at the website. They look at something and they go, that's where I'm going to start. I mean, I'm going to Bing that customer. I say Bing just because we do Microsoft stuff, but I'm going to Google realities. I'm going to Google what the customer is, and I'm going to go to their website and I'm going to see the overview of the company. I'm going to pop onto the company's website. If the number is not presented to me right there, and I'm not going to click the number, let's just say I'm going to go to their website, and I go to that website and I go look through their stuff. And now I'm ready to engage. Let's just say, so I feel like that first engagement is more often than not for net new people going to be website driven. And we're creating software essentially to go, we want to engage you right from the website and we want to bring you into Teams. Now we're doing it in a very creative way. No one else in the world does it. But we're bringing you right from the website right into your Teams client. And so that's where we look at it and go, instead of a phone call, why wouldn't you just go, let me connect directly with that company? And maybe it is a video on call on Teams. Maybe it is just a call. Maybe it is a chat. But let me just engage right with that company right now, right here. Right. And so those are some of the things that we're doing. And speaking of, really quickly, Brandon, I don't know that Ali even knows it, but do you even know about our fax application, Ali? We haven't even told you. Do you do any faxing at all?
It's funny you bring that up. So when I started almost 4 years ago here at DOWL, we had 6 fax numbers, and we're down to, I think, 3 now. One is a test, one is a junker that we just let everything roll to, and one is an outbound only. And that is it. And the utilization on those is so little. The only time it ever gets used is for state documents. And I think the unemployment office, anything with PII is the only time they ever require that. Everything else is electronically transmitted. But I know you can now integrate fax numbers into Teams. You can do texting out of Teams. There's so many things that are coming around now. And, we talk about the evolution of Teams. Teams grew so fast during COVID because it was a byproduct of Microsoft trying to fix a problem in the world to get everybody to work wherever they are. And it grew so fast that they had so many problems, but they've now been fixing that. Now that we've moved and we went to all new Teams on our tenant a couple months ago, 90% of our problems are all gone. And it has become such a smooth experience. And they keep adding all these new features in. The next one we're looking at is Teams Premium. And, is that another step we need to take? It's beautiful. And we need to go back and say it's worth the X number of dollars per month per employee, but we get all these additional features with us, right? So it's a product that's continued to grow. And with you guys, it's more that you can integrate into it.
I love it. I love it. So I didn't even know that you knew about our fax to Teams. It's not public yet. It is it's in beta, and it's going into beta July 15. And we basically have submitted all the information. I shouldn't say this, but it's patent. It's with lawyers right now. I'll just say it's with lawyers right now, because no one in the world has it. No one in the world has it, and I think it's a pretty like you talked about the regulatory compliance things that you have to follow, PII information. It's required to be over fax, right? So you're still going to have a fax at some point. You're still going to have a fax. Wouldn't it be elegant if it just popped right into Teams and dropped onto your SharePoint?
Oh, absolutely.
There you go.
I know this stuff is just changing every day.
Yeah.
Brandon, do you want to do the big reveal about Alaska before the end of this call? I mean, the changes that we're making.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I think what I want to stress around that is it's the partnership, right? I think it's really important. It goes back to the, know your business plan, make sure that you're solving your business plan, and then find the partner. And I'm not, obviously we're sponsored by Momentum on this podcast, and, I might upsell Momentum a little bit and brag a little bit, but, it's really, really important that you have a partner who hears what your challenge is, sits down and is willing to be creative with you as you journey through your evolution. And Alaska was one of those ones for you. It was, you were landlocked in the state. And, you're not the only customer we see this with. And you and I, we sat down and we got really creative on, hey, what if we terminate that call from the carrier in your Alaska office, and then let's use, we'll just call it network connections back down into your Seattle data center to our Seattle data center, and let's get creative on how we solution that to get it into our phone system to then deliver it out to you, and then evolving it from there into a Teams only solution via direct routing, right? We moved you from the cloud phone system to Operator Connect in the lower 48. And then we set up the direct routing, or we're proposing to set up the direct routing for Alaska. And it actually, just fresh, hot off the press, we have finally built out and we're able to take your numbers and port them in directly to Momentum, so we can offer you all of your services via Operator Connect, even up in Alaska, getting you into a 100% pure Operator Connect Microsoft Teams phone solution. And I think what that does is we're almost out of time. I want to pivot to two questions, maybe two of my final questions for you, Ali. Is there one, as you've gone through this journey, which you've gone through pretty quickly in what, 2.5 years, is there any challenge that you've had that the Teams phone system didn't solve or couldn't solve for you? So that's question one. And then the final question is more, now that you're on Teams phone, are there business process automations that you've started to look at from a communication collaboration perspective, where maybe you can start tying things together more seamlessly in the way your business operates? And that was a vague question. I can give you an example when we get to that as you're answering the question.
Yeah. So the first one, I think our biggest challenge was the operators. Our first step that we took, the tool that the operators had to use, because we weren't on Mitel anymore, we weren't on Teams, the physical phone was gone, and the operators could not use Teams as an operator to manage calls. It just didn't work for us. It was causing us problems. We needed to find another solution, but we were waiting for Momentum to have that Operator Connect client. Now that we've moved on to that and they are 100% Teams and operate as everybody else, those problems have all disappeared. There is nothing left at this point that our phone system can do more for us that we can't already do. Everything is already built out. You guys have helped us out with all our call flows, with our hunt groups, with any of the hotlines that we have coming into voicemails. It's all there. And then as far as the second question, yeah, go ahead and give me some examples, Brandon, because I'm not thinking of any off the top of my head here.
Yeah, a couple, and this goes back to kind of partnerships, and it would be like, hey, maybe you call me up one day and you say, hey, we've got this challenge. I'll give you a couple examples. We had one. They had an after-hour support team that they have on-call rotation. They moved to Teams, and they were suddenly stuck with this. Hey, our Cisco could generate a call out based on a voicemail, and Teams just couldn't do that. And so we sat down with them. We got really creative, and we said, tell you what we can do is we can create a Power Automate flow that takes, when a voicemail's left, we can take that voicemail in a Power Automate. We can shoot it out in an adaptive card to a Teams group or distro in Teams, whether it's the C-level, whoever wants to be on it, to flag the attention of that. Hey, you just got a call and someone better handle that. And then we created a dynamic workflow card that could show the leadership that was being handled by somebody on call. So that's one example. Another example we just recently got was someone said, hey, I've got this pseudo compliance need where I need to be able to record and transcribe a call. But once I do that in Teams, how do I move that transcription to my CRM? So we said, well, listen, if you're transcribing it natively with Teams recording, that gets stored out in, the Microsoft ecosystem, stream is how you retrieve it.
Correct.
So again, we used Power Automate to go in. Hey, here's where your recordings and transcriptions are at. You can now take that file and push it up into your CRM. So it's
Yeah.
stuff like that. So as you look out into the next 6, 8, 9 months, that's where my curious question was at is, are there business challenges or things that you're going, man, it would be nice if, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot if you don't know, that's fine. Just curious.
Yeah, I would say so. One of the things that we did is we have what are called hotlines. So any of the projects that we have, we put up a banner, we send out text messages to the community. If you have questions or problems, get a hold of DOWL. We'll work with you. We'll work with the contractor and the project manager and solve your problems. Those hotlines all go to a hunt group. If nobody answers, they go to a voicemail. That voicemail box is tied to a Teams group with all the members for each project that we have built out. So rather than using Power Automate to land in one mailbox, transcribe, move, we created Teams groups with SA accounts that are tied to each of those people. I don't know that we have any of those requirements right now, Brandon, because when we rebuilt our phone system, we took it down to bare bones and simplified it that most everything is done in Teams native, not with actually PSTN numbers coming in and voicemails. It is 100% Teams native. We do have some Power Automate flows that we've built, but those are phone system independent.
But I think the important thing there is that you're recognizing that you recognize there's the tools there, and when you have business,
Yeah.
when you have that business challenge, you're leveraging that. And Rick and I preach this all the time that the PSTN avenue into Teams is just one channel of and it's one small channel probably of the greater collaboration ecosystem that people are consuming day in and day out. And knowing that there's this whole power platform that sits behind it, I think is where Rick and I start to get kind of excited. Is it's the possibilities, as you said earlier, Ollie, the PSTN minute as it's declining, we're out getting creative with, hey, how can we create solutions that help businesses succeed in the collaboration space?
Yeah.
While solving their business problem.
Yeah.
One
A
of the
couple of
things
things.
that
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that a lot of people can't do, and just because of the behemoth Microsoft is, you can't know everything. It is really difficult to grasp every part of your Microsoft ecosystem that you have access to. And we are full E5. I've got 3 people full time that sit on my network operations team. And every week they're coming to me saying, we want to turn on a new feature. We want to set up this new process. We want to build this new tool. Guess what else we have access to now, right? I mean, we've gone in the last 4 years from
we've lost Ali. Looks
We
like
have
his
lost him.
internet has cut off.
He just dropped.
We'll give him a minute to see if maybe he joins back.
Yeah, Bailey, you want to pop in, Bailey? There he is.
We
lost you guys there for a minute.
We got you back. We'll blame it on the fact that we are not on Microsoft Teams as a platform.
It's Rick's AC. He froze my fiber too. So what I was going to say is, we've through the last 4 years, we've gone from the traditional network of, local AD joined computers to now being Azure AD joined, 100% SSO. I mean, we're controlling every computer with full Defender, with Sentinel. These are things that it takes years for companies to be able to adopt. We've been able to do in 4 years what a lot of companies can't do in a decade. Mm-hmm. And it's at the hands of my team. They every day keep looking at, what is Microsoft giving us? What are the cool features? And the lucky thing for us is I live right here in the greater Seattle area. I have my Microsoft rep cell phone number ready to go at any given time. I've lost count of the times that I've gone on campus to visit with them and talk about what cool things are coming up next. But the one thing I will say is, before we made this change, he was my first call. And my big thing for him was to know, we've gone from Skype to Teams, and Microsoft has developed crazy on Teams right now. Is it a long-term product? And he said, hands down, it is not going away. This is going to be a product for the centuries, and we're just going to keep building on it. And that's it. That's what told me we need to take that next step, and started this whole path of this is going to be our next evolution, not a traditional PBX.
Love it. Love it. A couple of things I want to say is real quick, forms to Power Automate are my new favorite thing right now. And just being able to collect information and then do things with the information back, and make decisions based on whether it's sections or branches. One more thing, and I know we're hitting the top of the hour in just a moment. The other thing is that you talked about Teams Premium. That gets me really excited because I think if you have Sales Copilot and Teams Premium, you can dump all that CRM data right into Salesforce automatically. And that's pretty cool, or to whatever your CRM is automatically. So that's pretty cool. I love that stuff. And the last thing I'll say, I know Brandon's got a question, but the last thing I'll say is you think like a CIO, Ali. This is kind of exciting because, again, when we talk to, maybe it's a network engineer or VP of IT, you're clearly solving business problems, and it's really nice to hear that the C-level is working at solving business problems with the tools that they understand and know, right? And that's what's exciting, because you're not just trying to replace, like items. You're trying to solve business problems. So from a thought perspective, I think it's exciting to talk to you and get into your head a little bit and have you explain things back to our group. Brandon, you had a final question. Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask Bailey, our wonderful producer, to rejoin. I'm gonna have her lead you out, Ollie, with one final question, maybe a 30-second response, and then Bailey will kind of give us one last bit.
Sure, Ollie. So, what piece of advice would you give as a CIO to other C-levels that are kind of on the fence with Teams?
I would say one of the big things, and a lot of people forget this, and I've had to remind multiple people over my 20 plus years, is the technology we have at our fingerprints is supposed to work for, or fingertips is supposed to work for us, not us working for it. So if you're having to be a slave to the technology that you have at your hands, get rid of it. Find something that works better and allows people to work effortlessly. Don't make your day a nightmare.
Love it.
And I like that. Outside of that, Ali, that's I'm just gonna say this. I'm gonna call you out just a little bit. I think that's all great, but you're like a walking cliche, man.
I mean,
I love it.
Don't know what to tell you guys. It's me.
I'm just kidding. That was awesome, man. I loved it. That's fantastic. Brandon,
Ollie.
response? Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
No,
Bailey.
That was fantastic, Ollie. I think we're gonna wrap it. Bailey's got one last sponsorship, I think, to throw out there, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, first I want to thank you for coming on the show. This episode is sponsored by Momentum. We move your business forward with Global Network and Microsoft Teams Phone. So connect, collaborate, engage with Momentum. And thanks for joining us.
Awesome.
Thank you all.
Awesome.
All right,
Ollie, thank you very much,
appreciate
Ollie.
it.
Absolutely.
All right, guys.
See ya.